And we are live. Rananim, hello everyone. Good morning to those of you listening here. You're tuning in live here in Micronesia. Good morning to our listeners in the States. Good evening. It's about maybe 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So welcome everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you're listening from, when you're listening to this live stream. This is a talk time with Morgan Cobbs. Cobbs Corner, as you can see, the background, Cobbs Corner, the one-stop shop for all things TV, film, and pop culture. Um, Before we get into the news for this week's episode, I guess I kind of always start these episodes off with a bit of a life update slash real world update. It's my understanding that back in the States, daylight saving time has ended. Yep, daylight saving time has ended, and so now us here in the FSM, we don't observe daylight saving time. We're too close to the equator. The sun usually comes up at 6 o'clock in the morning and then sets at 6 o'clock at night. So no daylight saving time out here for us. I know there was a bill that was introduced in Congress, and there was a bill that was introduced in Congress to accept daylight saving time as the national standard. Unfortunately, the bill did not pass in the House of Representatives, so we still have daylight saving time. And I've also heard that daylight saving time started in the United States after World War One. So not till I want to say 1918 was when it was started, and it was something to do with the farmers and yeah. 1968, Arizona stopped observing daylight saving time. My grandfather went to college in Eastern Arizona College. Shout out to my listeners in Arizona. Eastern Arizona College in Thatcher, Arizona. And this was back in the 60s, and they tried doing daylight saving time back then, but as he told me, it didn't work out because nobody's clock was right. And at the time, you had to manually turn your clocks back an hour and turn them an hour forward in the spring. It wasn't like today with smartphones where they just do it automatically, so you don't really have to think about it. They tried it, and then 1968 stopped observing daylight saving time, or accepted daylight saving time as the national standard. And at the time, daylight saving time ended in October. It was the last Sunday in October. That was when daylight saving time ended until 2007, where big candy corporations, probably like Hershey and a couple other big candy companies, petitioned Congress to extend daylight saving time to the first Sunday in November. And that's why daylight saving time ends the first Sunday in November. All this so that kids could have extra hours of sunlight to go trick-or-treating on Halloween, so that these big candy companies could make more money. So yeah, there's there's a whole capitalistic incentive as well as a bit of a political agenda behind daylight saving time. And well, I've also made it my policy on this podcast, we don't ever really get into politics ever, but shout out to everyone in the States, dealing with the daylight saving time. That's not helpful to countries like the FSM that do not observe daylight. Alaska, because I know those are the two states that don't observe daylight saving time. Enjoy driving home from work in the dark. So, last Friday, so not 2 days ago, but 2 Fridays ago, November 3rd, that was the FSM's Independence Day. It was the FSM's 20 or 36th 36 37th, 37th Independence Day. They celebrated their independence from the United States. I don't know if I've ever really talked about the history of Micronesia, but brief history lesson. And I recommend you guys go check out Geography Now. They did a whole in-depth video on the FSM and the Compact of Free Association, and so they can explain it better than I can. Big shout out to Geography Now. Micronesia was settled by Austronesians centuries ago, and then around, I want to say 18th or 19th century, the Portuguese sailed by Micronesia. They weren't very interested. The Spanish sailed by Micronesia and were very interested. And Micronesia was under Spanish occupation for probably over a century, up until 1898, the end of the Spanish-American War. And Spain had given Micronesia to the Germans. They had sold Micronesia to the Germans, so Micronesia was under German occupation for, say, 1898 up through maybe 1917, 18. So probably a good 20 years, 15, 20 years, they were under German occupation until the end of World War I, when Germany had given Micronesia to Japan. So Micronesia was under Japanese occupation from the end of World War I up through about 1944. Operation Hailstone. It's actually the history of this school, of the main building of Xavier High School, which was established in 1952. It used to be a listening outpost for the Japanese military during the Second World War. And then in 1944, now military historians, shout out to you all. Feel free to comment in the chat, specific details. Military historians. Shout out to all of you. 1944, there was Operation Hailstone, which was essentially the liberation of Micronesia. And actually, this school, back when it was a listening outpost, was actually bombed by the U.S. military. So Operation Hailstone, which they refer to as Japan's Pearl Harbor, and that's what liberated Micronesia in 1944. And then after that, they were a UN trust territory, and then they became a U.S. territory, probably in the 50s. 1952 was when Xavier High School was established. Yep, Xavier High School was established in 1952. So for about probably a good 30, maybe 40 years, they were a U.S. territory. And then in 1986, they signed there's a FSM Independence movement. They united as the Federated States of Micronesia. There's Chuk, Pohnpei, Kosrae, and Yap. Those 4 states, they formed the Federated States of Micronesia, and they had a independence movement. In 1986, the first Compact of Free Association was signed, and this Compact of Free Association, signed in 1986, renewed in 2004, and is set to be renewed again, I think, next year. Because I think the 2004 compact was renewed for over 20 years. So at some point, within the next year, they're supposed to go back to Congress and renegotiate. But yeah, the Compact of Free Association essentially states that because they're not an official U.S. territory and they have a nominal claim to independence, like the United States. Again, they just celebrated their independence from the United States. U.S. territory, the U.S. has relinquished its official hold on Micronesia, and Micronesia has a nominal claim to independence. Although during their time as a U.S. territory, they were able to have all these mutually beneficial trade deals and treaties and diplomatic relations with other nations. So, and then let's not forget all the infrastructure and the even in town, I can see sort of bits of American culture that's kind of mixed in well, not mixed in, but like I can like you go into town here in Chuk on the island of Weno, and you can kind of see certain like elements of like Western culture as well as indigenous like Chukese culture as well. So they still have diplomatic relations with the United States, but they also have diplomatic relations with out of proximity relations with China, India, with Australia. Those are like the closest. Well, I guess Australia, geographically speaking, is one of the closest developed countries. So strong ties with Australia, but also ties with India, with China. Like they've donated like police cars and built gymnasiums. And so I think actually our computer center here on campus was partially funded by I think the Chinese government. Like the Chinese government and the Australian government partially funded our computer center that used to be the chapel. So and also U.S. citizens can live and work in Micronesia without a visa. That's how I was able to come out here and work here at Xavier uh, without a visa. You know, I have a U.S. passport. I was able to come here, and I can live and work here freely. And Micronesians can go to the United States and live and work in the U.S. without a visa. Micronesians can serve in the U.S. military, although they don't share the same benefits. So yeah, Compact of Free Association, it's called. And that term might come up in the news later on next year as the compact is set to be renewed, as the 2004 Compact of Free Association expires next year. 20 years. So within the next year, there's supposed to be another compact to be signed. So yeah, that's just a bit of a history lesson on Micronesia and where we are. We just celebrated our Independence Day here in the FSM. I realized that November 3rd is also Separation Day for Panama. Shout out to my Panamanian listeners, any listeners that I have in Panama. Shout out to you all, and any my fellow listeners of Panamanian descent in the United States and around the world. I don't know if I ever mentioned I am a quarter Panamanian, although I'm not fluent in Spanish, unfortunately, not yet. But yep, November 3rd. So happy belated Panamanian Independence Day as well. I realized that today, depending on when you're watching this, either today or yesterday, in the States was Veterans Day, or technically Veterans Day because it fell on a Saturday this year. Technically, the observed day is Monday, so it's already Sunday over here. So either like tomorrow or day after tomorrow is the observed day off the 3-day weekend. So big shout out to all of the veterans of the U.S. Military. We appreciate you. We thank you for your service, to the country, and especially those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. I myself, I've got family members who are veterans. I know folks who served in the military, who served overseas. I'm actually the direct descendant of an Army vet. So yeah, big salute to the veterans, and also big salute to my listeners in the Great White North in Canada. I realized that the United States Veterans Day, November 11th, is the Remembrance Day in Canada. And I remember when I took French class in my French class back in 8th grade, so 10 years ago, we learned about like Remembrance Day and something with like World War I and November 11th. It's like I think they say like at the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month, all the guns stopped or something like that. So it's a big shout out to my Canadian listeners and Remembrance Day, and to my listeners back home in the States. Happy Veterans Day. To all the to any and all veterans listening, thank you for your service. Cannot say it enough. We thank you for your service. Keeping us safe. Keeping us all safe back home. For even for folks like myself to even have the opportunity to go and work overseas and to be able to travel overseas and stay here in Micronesia. We've actually had some U.S. military personnel here in Chuuk. I think back in September we had the Marines. The Marines were out here. We've had some Navy folks out here. So there's like a bit of a U.S. military presence in this area. Protecting us, keeping us all safe. So salute to all of you. Yep. I realize in Connecticut we have there's a submarine force museum in Groton, Connecticut, which is southeast Connecticut. It's by Long Island Sound. It's almost in Rhode Island, actually. General Dynamics Electric Boat. They're located out there. They're one of the main companies I've had my eye on. I went out there when I was like 9 with my grandmother's church group. Shout out to St. Mark's Episcopal Church. And they had like a submarine simulator. I think it's like either like a naval or a Coast Guard like base or like training camp. So that was a fun experience. I definitely got to go back there again at some point. Also, I am halfway through the second quarter. Halfway through the second quarter, so can't believe it, but my very first semester teaching is winding down. It's coming to a close. I think I forget the exact date, but I think it's like the second week of December is the end of the second quarter, and then we have semester exams. So I'm definitely going to keep you guys posted with what's going on here at Xavier, and my experience as a teacher, and watching movies and all that. And again, there's no movie theater out here, so might be behind the 8 ball a bit with you guys. All right, so finally on to, again, the tagline of the podcast: TV, film, and pop culture. Let's get it started. All right. So I recently, last weekend, watched all 4 Expendables movies. For those of you who have VPNs, it's my understanding that Expendables 1, 2, and 3 are available on Netflix Japan. So, like for me, I have a VPN. I was able to change my location to Japan and watch the Expendables 1, 2, and 3 on Netflix Japan. And I think they're also available on Peacock, for those of you who have Peacock. And yeah, I liked the first one. The first one, like the appeal of the first Expendables movie was the fact that it came out in 2010, and you had all these action stars from the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s all coming together. You had like pretty much like 2 separate generations of like action stars. You had Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Willis, Statham, Terry Crews, Jet Li, Dolph Lundgren, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and anyone else I forgot. So it was like a really big event. Had a pretty solid story. Group of not really a ragtag group of like master tacticians and ex-military. Mickey Rourke was in the movie as well. So yeah, solid story, solid cast. I like the first one. Apparently, I was watching the Sly documentary, which I'll talk about later on in the episode. The Sly documentary on Netflix, where Sylvester Stallone injured when filming the first Expendables back in 2010, and he never fully recovered from it. He got injured. He had a whole, I think it was like a shoulder injury. He had a whole surgery for that, and then he still to this day like has never like fully recovered from it. Like 13 years later, he's still like semi injured from that because And to be fair, Stallone was 64 when the first Expendables came out. Like he was 64 years old in 2010. He's 77 years old now. So he's pushing 80 years old now. Schwarzenegger's also kind of up there. Schwarzenegger's 76, 77. And apparently, like I remember hearing how like apparently like back in the 80s when Schwarzenegger, when he was doing Predator and Terminator and True Lies and Total Recall, he was in his action, he was in his like action film era. That apparently through movies like Rambo and Commando and Rambo, that Stallone had become a rival of Schwarzenegger. So like the two of them, they were really like in competition with each other back then. They didn't really get along back then, like back in the 80s. Like there was a constant like competition. They look back and they laugh at it now that everybody's like older. I mean, there's no bad blood or nothing between Stallone and Schwarzenegger, and the two men who I actually respect. Their work ethic and their success. They both deserve all the accolades that they have. They both have documentaries on Netflix. I think it was nice to see sort of Stallone and Schwarzenegger working together. Expendables 2 is my favorite. 2012. They brought in Jean-Claude Van Damme, in addition to like most of the cast from the first movie returned for the second movie. They did bring in Liam Hemsworth as well, so we're kind of like bringing in some new blood as well. So we start to see. Sorry, I was just grabbing the fan. We start to see sort of we're in the tropics, guys, and we starting to see a sort of a bridging of the gap between like the older generation and the younger generation. So we're bringing in some new blood, some new faces, some recognizable faces. New Hollywood. The third one fell flat because the third one, 1 and 2 were rated R. Expendables 3. I remember when it came out. I kind of remember Expendables 2, and I definitely remember Expendables 3. 2014, Stallone was 68, so he was pushing 70. This is nine years ago. It came out, I think, August 2014. I remember because I was going into high school, and I remember saying how Stallone is just old. It's like he's past his prime. He was cool in the 80s, but like now he's just kind of old. It's like, how many more of these movies are you going to do? They brought in Wesley Snipes. There was a lot of meta jokes. I liked with like 1 and 2, like a lot of the meta jokes, and hearing Schwarzenegger say "I'll be back," and so you hear Bruce Willis say "Yippee-ki-yay," like like there's a lot of like meta jokes, and really like Expendables 1 and 2 is like it's a cinematic event. Like you can bring together all these action stars, different franchises. Expendables 3, it was PG-13, so it was like watered down. A lot of the action sequences were kind of watered down. Like it just didn't feel like Expendables. It just didn't feel like Expendables 1 and 2. Those are R-rated. Expendables 3, PG-13. And so they watered it down, and they brought in Wesley Snipes. It's funny he mentions how he was in jail for tax evasion. I just couldn't really get into like Mel Gibson's character. I've never really been the biggest Mel Gibson fan. Mel Gibson, he felt like kind of like just a generic bad guy. And I mean, they brought in Ronda Rousey, and they brought in like a bunch of people who were kind of just like popular at the time. And Terry Crews's character almost dies within like the first act. Almost dies. And then we see him at the very end. So yeah, Expendables 3 was just kind of, I don't know. And then I think the fans had demanded that if they were to do a fourth Expendables, it had to be rated R. Expendables 4 came out back in September of this year. Most of the cast from Expendables 3 did not return. All right. Very few of them actually returned. They tried to shift the focus away from Stallone, Statham's character, Christmas. Yep, they tried to shift the focus and put it on to Christmas instead of Brad Bradley, I think was Stallone's character's name. And then they brought in 50 Cent, who really was just an accessory. Like, again, it's like they try to just throw together actors that are like popular at the time. And I've never particularly been a fan of like 50 Cent as an actor. That's just me. But I feel like they just gave him some of like the worst lines in the movie, just these snappy one-liners. Like, he's just not really there, like contributing, like being like an active member of the group and of the movie. I felt like he was just kind of plopped in there. They did not bring back Terry Crews. They didn't bring back Terry Crews. They brought in Tony Jaa. They brought Tony Jaa, so I like Tony Jaa in this movie. But without revealing too much, I mean that movie was just. Yeah. I actually reviewed it on Letterboxd. I'm actually going to find that Letterboxd. You should all be following Cobbs Corner on Letterboxd. I'll be writing reviews for different movies there. So here, Expendables. Yeah, Expendables. Here's what I had said was the opening act was super slow and uninteresting. The watered down CGI made the movie look like a video game for the PS2. Very few of the cast members from the previous films came back. Megan Fox was very annoying to watch in this film, and 50 Cent felt like a side character who didn't do much except give us quippy one-liners every now and then. The only redeeming quality of this film was Jason Statham as Christmas, because Statham brings his A game to every role he is in. I get that Stallone is now pushing 80 and cannot do as many action-packed scenes and stunts that he used to do as Rocky or as Rambo back in the 80s, but if that's the case, then maybe they should have just ended the franchise with Expendables 3. I'm praying that this is the last Expendables movie. So that was my that was my that was pretty much my review. That was my review for Expendables. I realize in the chat we got Silver Black. Silver Black asked, "Do you enjoy teaching at? Do you enjoy teaching at Chuk?" Yes, I do enjoy teaching at Chuk. Do I like the students? Yes, I do. I like the students. I enjoy teaching. Thank you, Silver Black, for your comments. Thank you, Silver Black, for your comments. Okay, yeah, and now we're back. Sorry, guys, the Wi-Fi has been really, really bad here. So So yeah, that's the Expendables franchise. I get that the movie did come out during the SAG-AFTRA strike, so there was limited promotion for that movie. Also, SAG-AFTRA strike has finally ended. You know, powers that be, they've come to a tentative 3-year deal, like a 3-year contract with the powers that be. So who knows? We may have another strike in 3 years because that 3 years is going to go by like that. Shout out to the Higher Learning the Higher Learning podcast with Van Lathan Jr. and Rachel Lynn Lindsay. You know, big salute to Higher Learning, Van Lathan and his time at TMZ, and Rachel Lynn Lindsay, her work as a lawyer, and she was also on, I think, The Bachelorette. So yeah. But yeah, that's the Expendables franchise. Please, let this be the last Expendables. Begging you, Lionsgate. All right. So what else? On the Marvel front, Loki season 2 just ended. Nope, we just ended Loki season 2, and my goodness, what an ending, folks. What an ending. That we see. I like how the show started with sort of a recap, and we see Loki for the first time back in Avengers. The first time that Loki was, if you remember, the scene in the Avengers where he shows up to Project Pegasus and says, like, I am Loki of Asgard, and I have been burdened with glorious purpose. So, Glorious Purpose, which was the title of season 1, episode 1. The series premiere of Loki was called Glorious Purpose, and now the season finale is called Glorious Purpose. So this is all coming full circle. It's a full circle moment for Loki, and I like how the opening credits, it starts out like it's sort of like the regular Marvel opening credits, like the Marvel Studios like opening logo, but backwards. So we start with the Marvel Studios logo, and then it goes backwards through all the moments from the MCU, and we see like T'Challa's shockwave like going down, and like seeing how like it's all in reverse, a nod to how like the entire MCU timeline can be reversed, essentially, that it can all be reversed. And essentially that it can all be reversed, that it can all be undone. So I thought that was nice. Then we pan over to episode 4. I think it was episode 4, where they're at the TVA, and then Victor Timely, he runs out onto the device that they have out in space, and he ends up dying. But then Loki has now figured out how to time slip. So now he realizes that spoiler. All right, yes. The segment will contain spoilers for Loki season 2, episode 6. If you have not watched Loki season 2, episode 6, log off right now. You have been warned. And 3, a 2, a 1. So Morbius the vampire showed up. Yes, for some reason, Morbius the vampire, Morbius the living vampire, Jared Leto, he was in this episode as well, guys. Mephisto, no. Pipe dream. Mephisto's probably not. We don't know when Mephisto's going to show up. All right. Shout out to Eric Voss. Going to be a lot of shout outs this episode. And so we see how Loki has now learned how to control his time slipping, and to control, it's like consciousness slipping, which is a similar time travel that was used in X-Men Days of Future Past with Wolverine, and with, I think, now I'm not familiar with the show, but Destin on Lost. Anybody who's watched all the episodes of Lost, apparently there's a character named Destin who his consciousness travels back in time to, his consciousness is able to travel back in time or travel through time into his like younger self. And so we see that with Loki, he's time slipping, but he can control his time slipping, and and he realizes that he has to just go back in time and redo the the English, this sequence where Victor Timely goes out to whatever the device was. I can't think of the name at the moment. And, put the key in and then press the green button. And press the green button to close the rings. And, we get to hear a fifth of Beethoven, a disco remix of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. The it's like, you guys remember Robin Thicke? He did a rendition of Fifth of Beethoven way back when. And so we see this time loop again and again. Loki, he's learning more and more about not just Victor Timely, but about the different time loops and how to go out onto the rings and to make sure that Victor Timely doesn't die each time. So like he does it over and over and over again in a Groundhog Day style sort of like time loop. And I also realized now, if you haven't listened to my Groundhog Day review, definitely go and check that out. And I think for Groundhog Day, director Harold Ramis, he confirmed that Phil goes through that time loop like 10,000 times or something. Like I said in my Groundhog Day review that it's implied that the time loop is repeated more times than we see on screen. So on screen in this episode, we see 12 times. Yeah, we see 12 times we see this time loop repeat, although it's implied that it's more. And it's funny that there's even a time where Loki goes further back in time with his time slipping to earlier in that episode, where you see Ouroboros and Victor Timely, and Loki asks like, how many times, like how long will it take for me to understand everything about physics and math? And Ouroboros says like decades, to which Victor Timely says centuries. We get a nice time jump title card that says like centuries later, which is the longest time jump that we've gotten since Avengers Endgame. Like I remember sitting in the theater at the ending. We see how no matter how many times they go through this time loop again, and no matter how many times that Loki goes back to He Who Remains, they revisit the season finale from season one, episode 6, where Sylvie kills He Who Remains, a variant of King the Conqueror. And seeing Jonathan Majors be such a presence in this show, again, I am really, really hoping and praying that he gets acquitted, that he gets declared innocent. But I also feel like Disney, like Marvel and Disney, like they must know something that the rest of us don't know. And I think that's part of the reason why Majors has been so prevalent with the last 3 episodes of Loki. So yeah, just seeing Jonathan Majors as He Who Remains, and then Loki realizing that he has a higher calling, and that last thing that he desires, him saying the last thing I desire is a throne, and then him having to go out onto that bridge and then grab all these different time loops and pull and hold them together. We get a final shot of Loki sitting on the throne, him having to divorce himself from the flow of time and have to hold together this multiverse himself. So it was a nice little character development moment, like nice little full circle moment for him. Again, glorious purpose. You know, he realizes that it is his purpose to divorce himself from the flow of time that we all experience and to hold together this multiverse itself. Um, so I'm hoping that maybe there's a season 3 of Loki. Loki has definitely been, in my opinion, one of the best Marvel shows. Like, just Marvel's like Disney Plus shows, I feel like Loki is definitely the best. Just outdoes everything else. And Marvel's been kind of mid recently. I haven't seen the Marvels. I know the Marvels recently came out 2 days ago, November 10th. I've heard some pretty okay, spoiler free right and center. So just a reminder to be respectful of your fellow Marvel fans, like myself, who might not have seen the Marvels yet. So please, no spoilers in the comments below. At some point, I will actually go and see the Marvels, but I've heard it's got some pretty not average, but it's got some pretty okay rumors like that. It's a fun movie, so yeah, I'll check that out. I mean, I'm gonna check out everything that Marvel puts out, movies, TV shows. I'm gonna watch it regardless. Yeah, I'm gonna watch everything regardless. You know, I'm gonna watch it all. Regardless, I will take the good with the bad. But Loki, definitely the good. Um, the trailer for Echo just dropped. Echo, which drops January 10th. All episodes of Echo are dropping on the same day, and you will have um, to include TVMA because this will be Marvel's first TVMA rated series. All the Marvel Disney Plus shows have been rated like TV 14. So I mean, the Disney Plus shows over the last 2 years, we've gotten WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, uh, Marvel What If, Loki season 1, Hawkeye, right? Well, What If season 1, Loki season 1, Hawkeye. We've gotten Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk Attorney at Law, all of it's all been rated I think it's all been rated TV 14. So, and we still have What If season 2 coming, I think next month. But Echo looks pretty good. I'm in the process of sitting and watching the entire Defenders saga, which is on Disney Plus. So that's Daredevil, Jessica Jones, the Defenders limited series, and The Punisher. So all those shows, they were on Netflix, but they are on Disney Plus now. I'm in the process of actually sitting and watching all of these shows. I'm on Daredevil season 1 now. So January 10th, Echo. What I think would be an interesting matchup would be Echo versus Daredevil, because Matthew Murdock, he's blind, but then Echo, she's deaf. So I think that'd be an interesting matchup. But I like how we're getting sort of a window into Echo's upbringing and her as sort of, I guess, anti-hero would be her official title. So yeah, looking forward to Echo. I'm looking forward to What If season 2. Marvel has had a kind of a this year, 2023 has been kind of mid lately with Marvel, especially with the writer strike and the actor strike this summer. That again, actor strike that like just ended last week, and so all the delays and movies being pushed back. I saw a post on Instagram that said that Deadpool 3 might be Marvel's only movie next year. That Captain America Brave New World has been pushed back to 2025, along with Avengers, Kang Dynasty, I think, the Fantastic Four movie. A lot of movies that maybe were slated for next year have been delayed to 2025. And that 2024, Deadpool 3 might just be the only Marvel movie. And I think it's been pushed back to July of 2024. So the last year that Marvel only put out one film was 2010. I want to say, yeah, because 2008 was Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk. They didn't put out any movies, 2009, and then 2010 was Iron Man 2. So yeah, for the first time in 14 years, Marvel will be putting out. Oh no, my bad. 2012. 2012 was the last time that Marvel only put out one movie. Yeah, 2012 they did the Avengers, and then that was it. Yeah, 2013. Yep. I think that's last time that they put out only one movie. Quality over quantity. Quality over quantity. And I think I've said on this podcast before that they got to get these like studio politics. They got to get it handled. Not just Marvel, but DC as well. They got Warner Bros. They got to everybody's got to get on the same page. You can't be creating great content when there's shenanigans happening behind the scenes. Seen it time and time again. So, but definitely looking forward to Echo, which hits all episodes drop on Disney Plus January 10th, which is actually 6 days before my birthday. So, it's going to be an early birthday present. Yep, before I enter the Jordan year, I'll be 23, January 16th. So, I do a special episode, or I have no idea. Back in January of this year, I started the Fantasy Movie League, which I've talked about before, and this will probably be the last thing that I talk about today because we're approaching the hour mark. My picks for the Fantasy Movie League were, my first pick was Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which didn't do all that great. My second pick was Creed 3, which I liked, and I think maybe didn't do as good as it could have because it did come out 2 weeks before the Jonathan Majors scandal. So Creed 3. Cocaine Bear was my third pick. Cocaine Bear, which was just hilarious. And I think my fourth pick was, now at the time it was called Untitled Ghostbusters Afterlife Sequel. It is called Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. And initially, now back in January, the initial release date for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire was sometime in December of this year, December of 2023. Due to the SAG-AFTRA strike, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire has been pushed back to March of next year. And just looking at the trailer for it, I mean, most of the cast from Ghostbusters Afterlife, which I saw in theaters November 2021. Most of the cast is returning. We got Bill Murray as Peter Venkman, Ernie Hudson's coming back. Emily Allen Lind, not sure if she was in Afterlife. Logan Kim, Finn Wolfhard. I like how we're going back to New York. Dan Aykroyd is coming back as Ray Stantz. Again, Harold Ramis is unfortunately no longer with us. And Midwest. So I like how they picked up the continuity with like actually killing off stands off screen, because Harold Ramis, he died in real life in 2014. So having the movie follow um, Egon's grandkids. So that was a fun movie. I feel like I have to watch it again because I missed the first like 10 or so minutes. But Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, I had said back in January that I thought it was going to do well, just given the nostalgia of the original Ghostbusters and, then bringing back the original cast and, just Ghostbusters being such a beloved franchise. But yeah, I know then the SAG-AFTRA strike happened. And because we were saying even in January that it might not even come out this year. That sometimes a lot of movies, like if it's like January and they'll say like, oh, this movie's initial release date is like November, December. For a variety of reasons, some movies that come out within the last quarter of the year, they just get pushed back to like the following year for a variety of reasons beyond just actors, beyond just like actors and writer strikes. But due to the SAG-AFTRA strike, Sony Pictures, they pushed back Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. It's coming out the day that Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse was supposed to come out. So March 29th, 2024. It's directed by Gil Kenan. It is not directed by Jason Reitman. Jason Reitman, who directed Ghostbusters Afterlife. His father, Ivan Reitman, directed Ghostbusters 1 and 2 back in the 80s. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire will hit theaters March 29th, 2024. It was one of my picks for this year, along with Kraven the Hunter. Kraven the Hunter, which was my fifth pick. Yeah, it was like what? Shazam 3, The Gods, Creed 3, Cocaine Bear. Gosh. Untitled Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I think Kraven the Hunter, and I had one other pick. Oh, Trolls 3, right. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, Trolls 3, which Trolls Band Together, which hits theaters November 17th. So Trolls Band Together, it comes out this coming Friday. So it comes out this coming Friday, Trolls Band Together. And I just know that movie's going to make a ton of money because kids' movies just do amazing at the box office. Kraven the Hunter has been pushed back almost 10 months to, I think, August 30th of next year. It was supposed to come out October 6th of this year. It's been pushed back August 30th, 2024. So that's two of my picks that are not coming out this year. I've replaced I've replaced Ghostbusters Frozen Empire with Five Nights at Freddy's, which I still have to watch. I heard it had a low Rotten Tomato score, but it's gotten a really great audience score, and I've heard a lot of really good reviews. So I definitely got to check that out in preparation for the next episode of Talk Time with Morgan Cobbs. And my replacement for Kraven the Hunter is The Color Purple. The Color Purple, which comes out on Christmas. I think it comes out on Christmas. It's got it's a remake of the original 1985 Color Purple. It's a remake of the original 1985 Color Purple. It's got Haley Bailey, Fantasia, Danielle Brooks, Corey Hawkins, Coleman Domingo, Taraji P. Henson. It's got Sierra. It's got a pretty stacked cast. It comes out December 25th, so it comes out on Christmas. I have not read the book, The Color Purple. I have not read the book. I have not seen the original. I have seen The Color Purple on Broadway. I saw it on Broadway back in 2016, right before they took it off Broadway. I love the Broadway musical. I have to, at some point, read the book first, then watch the movie, then watch the remake. So I'm probably not actually going to see the movie, but I just have a feeling like it's going to do great and kind of help boost my score because, man, Shazam! Fury of the Gods and, man, that movie really, really killed me. I'm not even sure what place I'm in anymore, but and my bonus pick, Knock at the Cabin. Knock at the Cabin. I like Knock at the Cabin. I have to I have to see more of M. Night Shyamalan's works. I saw it on like a Saturday afternoon. And at 67% on Rotten Tomatoes. It did have Dave Bautista. 6.1 out of 10 on IMDb. My two on-screen talents were Dave Bautista and Michael B. Jordan. Michael from Star Wars, he had already picked Jonathan Majors. But yeah, I still think that on-screen talents, Dave Bautista for Knock at the Cabin, as well as Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Michael B. Jordan for not just his writing, not just him as an actor in Creed 3, but also directing, director's credit for Creed 3. So the both of them. But I even made a post on Instagram. My two new movies for Fantasy Movie League were Five Nights at Freddy's and The Color Purple. So we will see how those movies do. It's been really fun, Fantasy Movie League. I can't wait to do this again next year and to see what predictions that we made back in January, which ones came true, which ones were false. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun with, Zach from Nerd Dose, Michael from Star Wars, Khalil from Comic Boys. Thank you for facilitating this whole competition. Lee from Lights Camera Rant. And everyone else. I'm hoping that we can include more podcasts, and to have like a Fantasy Movie League draft for 2024 and beyond. So yeah, I mean, that is all I have for. Oh, well, actually, before I end this episode, I have started my American Film Institute's top 100 greatest movies of all time. Like American Film Institute, I think they're celebrating 100 years this year. Of all time. And yeah, so that is all I have for this week's episode of Talk Time with Morgan Cobbs. If you liked what you heard today, be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us, give us a review, preferably 5 stars, and share this podcast with someone. Share this podcast with your friends and family. Tell a friend to tell a friend. That's how, Cobbs Corner family. I consider you all my family. We are going to continue to grow. Definitely make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel and click that bell so you get notified when I upload. Tune into Talk Time with Morgan Cobbs every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Chuk Standard Time. The next day, everywhere else. As always, I will talk to all of you in the next episode.